Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. I'm KP. Nick is here in attendance with me once more because today we're going to be going through our SmackDown recap for this past Friday Night SmackDown. That'll be the 2nd of May edition. So how about we break everything down, get into all the action that took place, and let's go through it all in chronological order. So first of all, we would start off with LA Knight. He would open up Friday Night SmackDown after a little bit of chaos backstage between Damian Priest and the Bloodline. LA Knight would just ignore it basically and just walk on down to the ring. He would have a match scheduled for later on in the show with Damian Priest, but he would come on down basically reflecting on all the actions last week. So that goes back to the number one contenders match for the United States Championship, LA Knight versus Drew McIntyre one-on-one, and Damian Priest getting involved and obviously, costing both men really via that disqualification, no contest finish, whatever we're calling it. Looked like a DQ finish to me, regardless of that. It wouldn't take too long for LA Knight's recollection session to end because Priest would come on down after Knight would say his name. That seems to be how they do it, and it's always been the way. But yeah, Priest would come down. He would basically make his claim that Knight is wrong and that actually Priest saved him from being pinned against Drew McIntyre. LA Knight would get Samoan spiked by Solo. So Priest saying that because he did what he did during that matchup, he actually saved LA Knight and, he saved him from actually getting pinned by Drew. So, quite interesting that he would sort of like bring it up like that. The two would go back and forth a little bit, talking about the match last week and what happened in their perspective. So obviously having differences of opinions, as you would expect. And then Priest would basically get to a point where he'd say, all right, well, okay, how about we just, let's not wait for tonight. Let's just go right now. I'm ready to go. You're ready to go. Let's just get into the match. And that's pretty much exactly what would happen. The match would be would take place literally just after this opening segment, and we would go into the one-on-one match. So that would be LA Knight versus Damian Priest. That would also end in a DQ finish because Solo Sikoa would come out, the very end of the matchup and would attack Damian Priest. Priest and Knight would take out Solo Sikoa. Before then, Jacob Fatu comes on down, and he would clear the ring of everybody in sight. So, yeah, Jacob Fatu just proven to be a menace as always. Starting to get a little bit frustrated via these DQ finishes and no contest endings, whatever you want to call them. It just seems to be the way, and this whole sort of like feud and build with the United States Championship over the last, I want to say like a good 6 to 8 weeks here, really. It's been quite a long time. But these DQ finishes / no contest, they've been so common during that time. And I'm sure we've spoken about this, Nick, and we've mentioned this before. But it seems to be that they have like one set idea, and it basically is the DQ happens, whether it's Jacob Fatu, whether it's Solo Sikoa, whether it's somebody else, whether it's like Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest. And then Jacob Fatu comes in afterwards and just destroys everyone. That seems to be their game plan here, and this was exactly the case this time as well. Jacob Fatu just taking out Knight with the announce table spot, and taking out Priest as well. It's just the same old each and every single week, but they change things slightly here and there. So yeah, it's a little bit of a, I don't know, like a little bit of copy and paste style idea, but hopefully they can figure things out and actually make it a bit more various with their finishes. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But either way, pretty chaotic start to the show. Jacob Fatu once again looking strong as he always does. We would then see a tag team contest between Fraxium and Pretty Deadly. Fraxium making their SmackDown debut last week against Los Garza. Then they would take on Pretty Deadly here today, and they would get another victory as well. So Fraxium have started very well on the main roster, as you'd probably expect them to. Having a bit of a back and forth match with Pretty Deadly, but ultimately, you probably would expect Fraxium to get the victory here, sort of like continue raising their stock since coming up to the main roster. And yeah, I got nothing really too bad about to say this. I got nothing bad to say about the segment really at all because it just makes sense. Like this is what they're going to be doing, building them up a little bit, using the other tag teams to have decent matches with. And Fraxium will be, a very common name with everybody, I'm sure, absolutely soon. The following segment, then, we would see Nia Jax cutting a promo in the ring, saying that although Tiffy is the women's champion, she's been pretty much recently acting like a headless Barbie doll, and not too fan of the women's champion Nia Jax. Nia would state how she was at home getting ready to come back, and she'd be wanting to take back what's hers when she was eventually ready to do so. Obviously, she came back last week to attack Tiffany in quite a shocking manner. But Tiffy would then show up moments later as Nia's calling her out. And she would then talk about how she defeated Charlotte Flair and even defeated Nia Jax, taking the title from her and then defeating her afterwards. Again, there was a rematch. Not sure how many people remember that one, but yeah, they did have another matchup of afterwards where Tiffany would go over Nia once again and retain the championship. So, referencing sort of like her past victories and obviously her most recent one against Charlotte at Mania, which is obviously very huge for her. Tiff sort of like standing up to Nia Jax even after the attack last week. Wouldn't be too long then before Naomi, she would come out and interrupt, basically referring to Tiff helping Nia whenever she herself was challenging for the Women's Championship last year. But now this is a different Naomi. She's different. She's got different attitude, different outlook, and different perspective. As to what she's doing at the moment. Obviously, with her thing with Jade recently, and Jade would come on down. Basically moments later, and she would charge down towards Naomi. That would start up a brawl between them two. Tiff and Nia would get into their own little brawl, and Nick Aldis would come down to announce a tag match for what would be the main event later on in the show. So I think they dubbed the Damian Priest and LA Knight match as what was going to be the main event. So now the women's tag team match is going to be instead. We then go on to Aleister Black making his in-ring, I guess you could say return debut, whichever we want to call it. Obviously, he came back last week and attacked The Miz during that segment, but this time he would actually have a scheduled one-on-one match with Miz. Aleister Black would win. No real shocks here, no surprises. You're not going to have somebody return and then lose straight away with the caliber of Aleister Black. But yeah, this just made perfect sense. Black starting off with a win, getting that momentum already in the bag, which is obviously what you want to see. Having a little bit of a stare down afterwards, Aleister would with Carmelo Hayes, the winner of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal Memorial. So I think maybe just planting seeds, perhaps it could be Aleister Black and Carmelo Hayes going one-on-one, maybe down the line. But it was pretty much as you expect. Decent enough match against The Miz. Aleister Black wins. Stare down with Melo afterwards. Planting seeds going forward. Yep, I'm all right with that one. Sounds good. Gets Melo into a decent feud if that's what they're going to be doing. So interested to see how they do handle that one going forward for sure. Then we would go into a matchup one-on-one with Zelina Vega and Piper Niven. This would be an opportunity for Zelina to get her first win under her belt since capturing the WWE United States Women's Championship last week against Chelsea Green. That was quite shocking manner, maybe for a lot of people. For myself personally, definitely. And she would have this match against Piper, maybe against Piper's wishes. Chelsea, in black, mourning the loss of her United States Championship. Zelina Vega would get the victory over Piper Niven, and she would basically overcome the numbers game once again in order to do so. But Zelina, you put the strap on her, you get the title on her. You probably got to expect her to win the next match afterwards, just to get some momentum building for herself off the back of that championship win. So it looks like maybe the Secret Service isn't done with Zelina Vega. It looks like they're sort of like sniffing around the scene still. Chelsea wants her rematch, didn't get it. Piper's in action. Maybe we could even have Alba Fire in a contest against Zelina Vega next week, or going forward, whatever. Before maybe then we get the Chelsea Green rematch. It looks like that's maybe what they're doing. But either way, regardless, good enough segment here. Just showcase Zelina Vega, get her back into the action. But Nick, what did you think of the start of SmackDown then, buddy? You got obviously, chaotic start. Another DQ finish. What are your thoughts on that one? I'd love to hear what you think about that. Obviously, with how common they've been recently. The tag team match, Fraction were looking pretty good still. Aleister Black, ever since he's come back, last week, there's been a lot of talk about him. So where's your head at there? And Zelina Vega, what was her first match since becoming the United States Women's Championship looking like for you?
Yeah, first, just wanted to mention, wasn't really in the mood for wrestling this week or this at this time, simply because of all the releases took place not very long before the show, so it always kind of puts a damper on the mood, at least me personally. Super critical and grumpy almost, but in particular Damian Priest kind of looked like he had been emotional, rightfully so, before you kind of tell it. But yeah, there's put a little damper on the evening. But It is pretty chaotic SmackDown. But anyways, getting to the actual action, yeah, we've mentioned it countless times. One of those things you just feel like we mention on a weekly basis. The disqualification finishes are, super annoying because they don't want anyone to ever lose a match. It seems, and at the end of the day, yes, records count, and someone who has a lot of momentum shouldn't be losing a match, but someone has to lose eventually. Otherwise, we'll not be invested in these matches whatsoever, because we know, especially in this particular title picture, that no one's going to lose anyway. So it's hard to keep track of. So it was a good match, and then I was like, yeah, okay, when are we gonna get the disqualification? And sure enough, we got it. So yeah, Jacob staying tall once again. Um, and then at least when Nick Aldis came out, he kind of addressed the repeated outcomes, the disqualification. He kind of noted that. And then later in the evening, we see Solo and Fatu with Nick Aldis, and Aldis states the match that will be happening. And then Solo says, well, what about Drew? Drew's a part of it too. And for whatever reason, he said that. Nick Aldis goes, you know what? You're right. So we add that. So we have our fatal four-way for Backlash and Solo, Fatu, Fatu, LA Knight, Damian Priest, and Drew. So interesting. I assume that's the end game, Solo and Fatu still, because why else would he say something like that? So, questionable decision at best. The Fraxium and Pretty Deadly match was good, obviously. As you kind of mentioned, Fraxium obviously is going to lose a match. And then I think kind of got a botched 3 count there. I think Kit was busted open there, and I think kind of got sidetracked, but not realizing he was supposed to kick out. But it was a great match regardless, as we would expect from those two teams involved. Aleister Black and The Miz really make Aleister look good here. Miz is usually pretty good at doing so. And while the match itself was good, and like I said, Aleister was made to look that way, the only thing I seem to have on my mind now is, as you kind of alluded to, that tease between Aleister and Carmelo Hayes. Sign me up for that. That'll be great. I'm excited to see that. And then Zelina Vega and Piper Niven. Yeah, pretty competitive contest. I think we're very much going to have Zelina be the underdog champion. I definitely think that's probably the route they're going to go here. And yeah, it was a pretty good match until Piper knocked down Chelsea, and then Zelina Vega gets the roll-up pin. It's what it is, not super meaningful. If we want to invest in that champion in Zelina Vega, I think she is going to have to get some clean wins. But for this week, well enough. And as you kind of mentioned, I too was shocked by the Zelina Vega win. And then Chelsea doing the whole mourning bit with her funeral clothing was just incredible. I really hope she's on to either bigger and better things, or maybe eventually get that U.S. title back. She's hitting on all cylinders right now, and it's a shame to not see her have a title.
Yeah, I felt like the character work of Chelsea Green is never really going to die down at the moment. It just seems to be absolutely top notch. So I think you summarized that pretty well there. Even though she's lost it, she's still doing a tremendous job of just absolutely just drawing people in and being interested in her character. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. It's always one thing when somebody loses, when someone wins a championship and they get into their gimmick, but then losing it and then having a bit of time where they're not a champion. I think a lot of people really struggle to really deal with that, and I don't think Chelsea Green's really going to suffer too much from that, because they've already quickly just got something to slide her into her next sort of like a little arc type style. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do things there. But so far, really, really good, and yeah, interesting to see where they play that out. But let's move on. Let's talk about all things going on after the Zelina Vega segment. Next up, we get Randy Orton coming down to the ring and basically talking ahead about his upcoming match with John Cena at Backlash. And Randy would say a few things which I was quite invested in here. So he would basically talk about having known John Cena for such a long time, known him for the last 20 odd years, 25 years, whatever you want to call it. He would basically say that this is the first time that people, outside of WWE are actually seeing Cena how he sees Cena. So there's a different Cena hidden in there. Randy's known it for a very long time. They've had very heated stuff. Everyone knows the rivalry between John Cena and Randy Orton. But now this is an opportunity for everyone else to see exactly what Randy already knew all those years and years ago. So I felt that was quite like a nice way to sort of like get things started. He wouldn't stop there. He'd go on to say how over the years, selling his soul, I'm talking about Cena here, is something that Cena's been used to. And that, he has merch after merch after merch, color after color after color, town after town after town they go to, they change the merch up. And it does seem like a little bit of like a cash grab type thing, because, you go to one place, oh, he got a new color. You go to another place, oh, he's got a new shirt. Oh, he's got a new shirt. Like, it tends to be the way. And especially for his farewell tour. I get it. I understand why they're doing that. But I think, from Randy's perspective, for those hardcore John Cena fans that want to have all the merch and want to have all of this, all of that, the parents of the kids that John Cena's been raising for the last however years, he said last week, it's a lot of money for them to put down, and a lot of money for them to actually spend on being such a large fan of John Cena. So yeah, I quite liked that Randy went down that sort of like different route and talked about the financial side, and referencing back to the conversation last week between himself and John Cena, and how John Cena said how he would be raising the parents' kids for the last 20 odd years. But I really liked the callback to that. But Randy would basically say that at Backlash, he's going to make sure that Cena is the next legend the latest legend that he's going to be putting down. So clear intentions here. Randy wants that championship. He wants to get number 15, which is quite something, being up there with. I think that'll put him probably third, wouldn't it? To be fair, because I think that'll put him outright as third anyway. But yeah, the build for this one is going on quite nicely here. Randy did well by himself. No Cena obviously this week. He's going to be back next week. So when you got to sell something yourself, obviously it's a bit more difficult. But I think Randy did a very good job. And I think he went a little bit unique with what he was saying, which is obviously a fresh thing to hear. That was great. The match after that would be Santos Escobar versus Rey Fenix. And this one would basically stem from a conversation backstage. Santos essentially saying to Rey Fenix that at WrestleMania he blew it against El Grande Americano, and how he let people down. So Rey Fenix obviously not looking too happy about that one. Would issue a challenge to Santos Escobar, and that would take place right here, right now. And it was a pretty fun match. I thought Santos had a really good showing for the most part. Thought he looked pretty strong for the majority. Rey Fenix, getting in offense where he needed to, and obviously looking strong in his own right. Eventually, he'd come out on top in the end, Rey Fenix, getting the victory over Santos, which would be expected, I think most people would say. And it's really sort of been about respect, this whole angle here. So Santos showing respect, and I put up air quotations there whilst I say that, towards Rey Fenix. Possibly at the exception of Los Garza, who, Legado del Fantasma is the three of them. And I think Rey Fenix maybe is sort of like being used here to sort of maybe make Los Garza try and improve and just try and basically get a lot better. I don't know if that's like the official sort of like way they're going with this, but it definitely seems something like that anyway. But I think this one now maybe got a little more personal between Santos and Rey Fenix, obviously with the match they've had. Rey Fenix getting the victory. There'll be a little bit of a segment backstage afterwards where Andrade would be on the scene, and he would basically be talking to Los Garza, saying that, Santos doesn't really respect you guys, and I don't think really his head's in it with you two. And then Santos would come on in a moment later and basically drag them back and basically say, don't listen to this guy. So, it's quite the interesting dynamic between the three men at the moment, now that we've got, obviously, Andrade in the mix there, and he's been talking to Berto especially over the last like few weeks. Not so much Angel, but it's quite the interesting dynamic here between these guys. But it was a fun match between the two. I quite enjoyed it, and Rey Fenix getting the win is obviously a logical decision here to make. Don't want to slow his momentum down just yet. And then going into the main event, as we mentioned earlier in the night, Jade Cargill, Tiffany Stratton taking on Nia Jax, Naomi. It would be a win for Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton. So next week, number one contenders match between Jade Cargill and Nia Jax. This is a great opportunity for one of these two women, depending on who would win, to get some momentum going into that matchup. So obviously Tiff being involved here as the women's champion, I think she did a pretty decent job of just being involved as much as she could. Jade Cargill, I think, looked pretty decent. We've seen a lot of her in tag team action. With Bianca Belair last year, tag team championship run. So singles action recently, we've had seen a different side of her. So this is obviously where she's a lot more comfortable. And it was, I think it was just good for her to sort of be put back in that position. But the way she'd get the victory, she would powerbomb Nia Jax, and that would be enough for the 1-2-3. Afterwards, have a little bit of a post-match thing with Naomi again. I think wherever Jade Cargill goes, Naomi goes. Wherever Naomi goes, Jade Cargill goes. It's like, they're each other's shadow at the moment, and they don't seem to be separate for too long. Even after the WrestleMania matchup, it seems to have not stopped since then. All gas, no brakes, as Jacob Fatu might say. But it's it was Naomi attacking Jade after the matchup to then stand tall to end Friday Night SmackDown. I think they're heavily investing in Naomi at the moment, and I think they're rewarding her, for the work that she's been putting in. And I know you're not such a big fan of Naomi, but I think you said recently that you are liking this new side of her. But I think each and every single week she tends to sort of like be involved in a much higher way. And I think she just seems to be very consistent right now. And I don't know if you agree with that as such, but I think that she's putting in some really good work right now. And the whole feud with Jade Cargill seems very, very heated, very, very personal, and it, even just flows through WrestleMania straight through to Backlash. Obviously the direction that we're going that is anyway. Doesn't seem to be slowing down for sure. So yeah, the women's division is looking pretty good right now on SmackDown. I'm not gonna lie. I think going into WrestleMania, it looked maybe a little bit bleak, but they seem to have suddenly just switched a gear, and it seems to be very very heated at the top. So yeah, I think they've done a great job recently. Seems to be a few women all around the position here at the moment at that top, around the championship, and it looks great to be fair. But decent enough tag team match. Jade Cargill getting the win over Nia Jax is interesting going into their match next week. So I guess it's all eyes on that number one contenders match. But Nick, what did you think? Randy Orton cutting that promo, talking about John Cena, laying out the foundations of the match by yourself is a little bit difficult, but I think Randy did a good job. The match between Santos and Rey Fenix, that was a pretty fun one, I thought. What about you? And then that main event, how do you think it's going to build going into next week?
Yeah, I think in terms of Randy and his promo, I think as we mentioned, kind of with the Cody bit where he's kind of soloing the promos. I think that can be difficult sometimes, but I think Randy and Cody in this instance, Randy doing a great job of that and kind of slamming Cena for all the merchandise. But that being said, having gone to Mania this year, it was by far wasn't even close. Cena's merchandise was the most popular. Like I said, not even close. So hate to dog him, but clearly working. But yeah, this is a good babyface promo, and I think Randy ended it with saying that Cena is going to be the last legend that he puts down. My only kind of negative about this whole thing is just it kind of feels too big for Backlash. I know obviously why we're doing it there, being the location of Randy's hometown, but I kind of feel like this probably would have been better served for at least a Money in the Bank or maybe even a SummerSlam. And who's to say we won't get that? Obviously, we could still potentially move that rivalry there. But yeah, looking forward to that match at Backlash. The Rey Fenix Santos Escobar match is a well. First of all, the match itself was very different in that it was a very slow burn, which I feel like is most of Santos's matches. He's very much not the standard luchador match that you typically expect from them. And Santos has always kind of been a little off that path, which I appreciate. I don't think I've ever seen a bad Santos match. So obviously what he's doing is working. But this whole build thing has been kind of strange in that Santos appeared to be trying to recruit Rey for LDF, and now he's in a match and fighting with him. And then I think during the match he was saying, "I should be your boss," and that whole thing. So it's an interesting tactic to try to recruit someone for your team. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, Andrade in the back with Berto and Angel. It kind of feels like this is LWO, LDF all over again. We had that never-ending feud with them last year, and it kind of feels like that's where we're going with this. And personally, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I feel like Andrade may be a little bit too big for that feud. But I guess at least if he's doing something, that's fine. But I think you start to put all these guys in some sort of match, whether it be 3-on-3 or maybe the blow off is Santos and Andrade. I think that could certainly be interesting. Or maybe they're all just going to go their separate ways. Maybe we get a Rey Andrade Santos match. I'd be absolutely okay with that. But I do want them to get going with the story. It's an interesting build so far. But in terms of this match, yeah, this was of course a great match. Like I said, I don't ever recall seeing a bad Santos match, and obviously Ray Phoenix does some really interesting, unique maneuvers in the ring as well. That one spot where he was knocked down and got right back up to give a kick, I believe it was a Pele kick. Yeah, that was a pretty cool spot as well. But yeah, interested to see where they take that one. Then the main event with Jade and Tiffany versus Naomi and Nia Jax, as you kind of alluded to, I do think they're doing a great job with this main title picture with Tiffy. I feel like everyone is kind of holding their own at any moment. I think any of them could take a title, and I wouldn't be that surprised. And props to Nia Jax. You again know I'm not a huge fan of her, but for her to come back and show absolutely no signs of rust, at least that I've seen, you know, granted, it's only been 2 months, and I'm sure she's been wrestling off the, off the main shows. But regardless, she's looked good, and yeah, not a huge Naomi fan, but this is by far the best work that I've seen from her in her career, in my opinion. But yeah, pretty good match. I feel like the main takeaway here for me was building up Jade, continuing to do that. Um, as excited as I am to see, and they kind of tease this after the match, with Jaden not giving her title back to Tiffy. As much as I think everyone wants to see that match, I don't think we're going to get that at Backlash with Jade and or upcoming. I don't think, because with Jade and Naya next week, I think the writing is on the wall. I think Naomi is clearly going to play a part in that and probably cost Jade that number one contendership. But maybe at a SummerSlam, maybe we finally get that Jade Tiffy matchup. And I think Tiffy beating Nia again next time, I think is a great shot for her as well. But yeah, it's a pretty entertaining main event. And Jade getting that power bomb on Nia Jax to win the match, of course, was a great scene. It's just she's improving. I think Jade. I think I like what I see from her. Yeah, I think WWE knows that the match we want to see is Jade and Tiffy. So probably going to hold that one out just a little bit longer. But yeah, in terms of overall SmackDown, yeah, I felt like it was like I mentioned at the beginning, I wasn't in the mood to watch wrestling, but considering all the things that happened before, but yeah, pretty entertaining. Nothing groundbreaking, but props to the talent for going out there and doing so and entertaining us after probably they were kind of in the same mood that I was, just not really feeling up for it. But I don't really feel like anyone showed that. So props to them. And yeah, I give this one a 7 out of 10. Decent enough. Just feel like we didn't make any huge strides in terms of overall picture, but entertaining SmackDown nonetheless.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength there. I also gave this one a 7 out of 10. I just thought that, I think after last week, it's hard to follow such a show because obviously we were very high on it then. It was a quality SmackDown. So I think anything afterwards is going to feel like a little bit of a drop down. This, yeah, I think you described it quite well. Nothing really sort of like changed too much, but there were like little bits here and there that just sort of like made it move on at like a steady pace. So yeah, I think 7 is a pretty fair rating. If we're both going for it, I think that's pretty clear for sure. But yeah, I think Backlash is next week. Obviously, probably not a lot changes there. Maybe a couple of little things. Obviously, we've got the number one contenders match for the Women's Championship, so that will be quite interesting. We'll be looking forward to that. I think you nailed it on the head there. I think Naomi probably will get involved and probably cost Jade the matchup, but I guess we'll see what happens regarding that. But yeah, for now, guys, this has been our SmackDown recap. So thank you very much for tuning back in to The Push with Nick and KP. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. And yeah, we'll see you all again very, very soon. Please hit like on the video, subscribe to our channel if you like what we're putting out here. And yeah, stay up to date with future content coming forward. But for now, this has been The Push with Nick and KP, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.